allegiance.
Oh.
I'm not. Are we supposed to?
Yeah, should.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. So we have to approve the agenda. I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Any omissions, errors? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. They approve the minutes from the March 18th meeting. I make a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
Second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. First item on our agenda is the debrief of our tour that was given at Gildersleeve this past Tuesday. I was not able to attend, but if others were, if you could give us a debrief of that event, please.
So we had a tour with one developer, Larry Dooley, who was here with us tonight from Colt, and another gentleman, I forget his name, from Edelbrook. Well, you can look it up. But so we toured Gildersleeve just to give them an idea of what the buildings were in Brownstone, and to get some ideas of what they thought about the buildings, and if there was any general thoughts about uses, or completely no way, this is never going to happen, or thumbs up, thumbs down, or just something to kind of bounce off of, real world developer type people.
Okay, any other thoughts? Okay.
I thought it was a very positive tour because you could see the different aspects of different usage. Like the gentleman from Edelbrook liked the idea that it was one story and it was broken off into sections. And he could foresee a use where they have like living in one area and teaching in another area for their students that they bring in there. And again, and then the developer comes in with a different aspect. Okay, maybe the building isn't usable and it's the land that's more usable, type of thing. So there's different functionality. Again, I didn't see anything hugely negative on the tour. Again, you don't know, what it's eventually going to be, but nobody said, "Oh my God, this is a disaster," and you'll never be able to do anything with it. There was more opportunity than there was not.
Okay.
Yeah. Nicely said.
Okay, any other thoughts?
And actually, that was mostly about Gildersleeve I was talking about, and then we went to
Okay,
Brownstone.
that was Gildersleeve, okay.
And that's got a whole different set of dynamics there, just because of the layout, less land, 2 stories, so that lends itself to something even different. And there was another gentleman there that I didn't get introduced to, so I don't know
His
where
name
he
was
came
Joe
from.
Janjinka.
Pardon?
Joe Janjinka. He's
Okay.
a developer as well,
Okay.
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 and he was going to be here tonight, but he's stuck in traffic.
Okay.
He was only
Okay.
at Biz.
Just at Biz, okay.
Right, he had already toured with Bob Shea and I, Gildersleeve a while back ago,
Okay,
and then he came and joined us at Biz.
okay. And it was Joe Jajinga?
Jinjinka. Jinjin.
Okay.
So you guys met with both at Gildersleeve and at Biz on Tuesday? With both parties?
With Joe met us at Biz.
At
so
Biz,
there
yeah.
were 3
Three
at
at
Biz,
Biz,
2 at Gildersleeve.
two at Gildersleeve, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We walked the property at Gildersleeve out
The back in the field, okay.
to get a sense of the width of the property, 16 acres.
Did you have a site plan with you that defined like the property line?
No, but we
No,
talked
okay.
about
We were
it.
able to talk about it, okay.
And it was a nice day, so you could see it.
That's fair.
Brian was there with us,
Oh, okay.
and Bob was there with us. They were there with us.
Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts on that tour? Move on to our next item. So the next item was an update from our previous meeting, and I called them assignments. I think we kind of took ownership of who we wanted to make contact with. I did print out a couple of copies, large size, if we wanted to mark them up. But the idea was that with the assignments, just to kind of verify who has made contact, who hasn't, if there's other ones that we should be reaching out for. Major supersized. Should have brought a chalkboard or something to put it on. All right, so Angela, you had given me 2 slips here. You had reached out.
To a couple of appraisers.
Okay.
One, he is reviewing the paperwork and he's gonna get back to us. That's been about 3 weeks ago. Spoke with him last week. Something else came up. He'll get to me this week, one of those things. That was Robert Silverstein. He's with Silverstein Appraisal in New London. The other person I spoke with was, where did it go? Mike Baldy, yeah. And he's an appraisal company. He reviewed the paperwork. He came back with a price of approximately $20,000 to do 2 school appraisals. They could do a package price of $20,000 with a delivery of an ETA of about 6 to 8 weeks. 2 separate appraisal reports will be provided, one for each school. Reports to be completed on an as-is basis and in conformity with the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice of the Appraisal Foundation, blah, blah. We would need to understand the town's intent to keep the zoning as is, not for these properties. The zoning assumptions have a large impact on the marketability to an end buyer. So that was Mike. I told him we'd get back to him, and that's what I found out.
Great.
So what we talked about out there at Gildersleeve about these 2 appraisals was, like Larry brought up, if the first thing a developer is going to ask is what can be built on these sites. And so, we had 2 very different developers at Gildersleeve. We have, Larry who's done all of Cole, developed multifamily, office space, education, and then we had Edelbrook, which is not for profit. What exactly do they do? They do like
They do behavioral developmental.
Yeah, developmental teaching and things like that. So very different.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
So what we talked about was maybe having, we have to look at it both ways, because we had, and you brought up a great suggestion, which was, what if it was something like, or could we do something like Copper Beach,
Mhm.
right? Which to me, it's a perfect layout for that. But the value of the property to do something like Copper Beach is totally different than the value to sell that building to a not-for-profit. Or, you know what I mean? So I think we kind of have to look at both ends of the spectrum. And
As this one
It's
appraisal
seen.
stated.
yeah,
Yeah.
and talk to, I have a couple of real estate brokers that I was gonna talk to, CBRE and another one, and I'm just trying to get a ballpark range of if the property could be zoned and it worked for something like Copper Beach, what do you think the property could sell for? If the property, if you just bought it as is, what do you think it would sell for? So that,
And then if someone's going to just remodel and reuse it, what is it worth to them
Mhm.
at that point?
right, yeah, that's kind of the second one I mentioned. So I was gonna reach out to those 2.
Okay, so then we had can, obviously Larry is here, so you did your homework, so we checked that off the list that you had made that contact, and we'll let Larry talk in a little bit. Dan, you had mentioned reaching out to Wilson Middle School. Were you able to make that connection yet? Sorry.
Merrick's.
Sorry.
Yeah, I did reach out to the planner in Middletown, Dan Beret, town planner. Merrick sent me over some information. It was really just old minutes. It wasn't anything that I thought would be very useful to you guys. That's why I didn't forward it along. It happened in the 80s, but there was nothing about the original state of the building or anything that you could really glean information as to make a comparison for how they made that transition in rehabbing that school into apartments to our current situation.
They still own it? The city?
That I'm not sure of. I can double check that.
I think maybe just a couple of questions I have off the top are, do you still own it? How's it going?
Yep.
Is it a loser?
Yeah, so,
Or-
yeah, mainly what I'd asked them for was just documentation on the approval process.
Yeah, oh, I got you.
So
But
I
that's
s-
a good reason to follow up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anything else besides ownership and status?
I mean, a lot of questions, but those are
Yeah,
two
those are
that would
basic,
really
yeah.
help.
Okay.
One other one might be, what would you do different, but that person may not have
No, yeah,
not
yeah.
been involved, but I think those two would really help us.
Sure. Yeah, and if they are owners, what model they're using and
Right.
how they're doing that. Okay. I will-
And then same thing goes with at the high school, while you're asking them about Wilson Middle, you can ask them about the old Middletown High, downtown Middletown. That's the senior housing.
I don't think that's senior housing. I think that's apartments and condominiums.
It's senior housing, my aunt lives there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And, but I don't know if it's also apartments.
Okay.
And condos, but I don't know if Middletown owns it either, if the city owns that.
Yeah, I have seen private sales
Yeah.
of the units on Zillow, but that doesn't mean they aren't the property owner.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if they were
Right.
with that kind of condo model or senior housing. Senior housing seems more likely. I can find out who's the owner probably for you right now.
Right.
Let me just go dig into their assessor database, and then if they are the owner, I'll let you guys know, and then I'll try to get more information on both those properties for you.
That'd be great.
So just give me 2 minutes.
Thanks, Dan.
That's on College, right? That's the,
Yeah, college.
that's the one, yeah.
yep.
So we're talking about, Ken's talking about Gildersleeve, some different possibilities with it. One is selling it as would be to a developer going in and putting something like a Copper Beach. The other one is possibly letting someone like Elbrook take over who's going to use that building. And then possibly somebody else coming in that wants to do something separate than I'm looking at this demolition opinion cost sheet we got, and I was hoping the cost we had between sight lines and this one was gonna go down, and it actually went up by about $2 million. So,
Yeah.
so going,
This
go,
is- I mean, I don't know about you, Brian, but if you don't mind me interrupting you.
no, that's fine.
There's no way this is correct, or there's something in here that we don't know what
No,
it is.
I mean, I'm looking at the number here that he's using per square foot, and just listening to you, Ken, and Brian, and just talking to a couple of people I know in the industry, the owner of DiMatteo Construction, and he said you're right in line with the numbers you guys were talking about.
Which is like $500,000-$600,000 or $10-15 a square foot.
So, but let's say for some phenomenon, this number's correct for some reason, and we had a meeting, I can't remember what meeting it was, we talked about, and I said, why don't we just keep Gildersleeve and put all our youth services and all our social service, organizations in there, Park and Rec and everything, and Ryan at that time said, you know, we can't afford to dump 5, 6, 7 million or whatever it was, the cost we were looking at in the building, and I agree with him. So here's a number, whether it's 500,000 to 700,000, or it's 2 million to 4 million, we have to find out what this cost is, because we have to put that in a column, and we have to say, okay, this is whoever's gonna purchase the building, if they're not gonna reuse that building. And we come up to them and say, this is the sightlines report. If they're gonna use it, there's some things they can take off that list, I'm sure. If they're not gonna use it, that's really, has no bearing on it. The only bearing would be taking the building down and go through zoning for what they want to do. So we have a cost if a company like Adelbrook, is it Adelbrook or
Yeah.
Adelbrook comes in and they're gonna use that building. I can't remember what Gildersleeve was it 7 or 8 million, somewhere around there in the sight lines? I can't remember, do you remember, Ryan?
Say 4.
Somewhere, let's say 7 million just to talk. So we'd have to let them know this is about where we are, because we're gonna sell you the building as is, where is, this is what you're gonna be responsible for. So that's gonna come right off the top of the property, as we know. If it's someone coming in that says this is a great piece of property, I wanna put some townhouses in here, I probably get zoned for X amount of townhouses, it's gonna cost me 200 to 300 in infrastructure, putting in roads, putting in water lines, putting in sewer. But I have a 4 million or whatever that number is that I have to take care of up front. So I think we really need to, we somewhat know what the sightlines report is, whether that's legitimate or not for what the end user is gonna use it as.
Hey, Sean, don't want to interrupt you, but Dr. Britton has an updated cost from Fryer Architects that he's going to present, what about this week, but next week, so.
For what?
For the demolition of that building.
This is the number, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the number.
This is Fryer Architect?
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't say that on here.
Yeah, hi everyone. I just passed that out just to give you guys a heads up on the new estimated cost that was just shared with me
Oh.
recently. So since we were meeting tonight, I thought I would share that with you so you could discuss. But that is what we'll be discussing at that joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Education, which will be next Tuesday now. So that will be a week from tomorrow. So just to touch on, in addition to that, Fryer also has updated numbers on the sightlines report. So I think that will be helpful. I was going to share that with you all as well, but then I had some questions going through some of the Excel spreadsheets. So I wanted to get answers to that before I shared something that I didn't, understand. Some of the numbers just don't add up yet, so I have to figure out how they did that, or,
Okay.
But I think that will be beneficial as well as we talk about, repurposing schools, and we know if we do keep Gildersleeve, and if it's not a school, or if it is a school, there's work that will need to be done with it if the town were to keep it, and then obviously if we were to demo the building, there's a cost with that, and yeah, I'm with you, Ken, I certainly hope it's a lot less than 4 million, so, all right.
Sorry, Sean. I didn't realize that these were the number came out.
So basically, I guess what I'm saying is, and I trust Brian, I trust Ken with their number. To be honest with you, more than I trust this number, but at the end of the day, we're gonna have to have somewhat of a real number on that. And I don't know, what we do.
I guess I was kind of looking at it in a similar fashion. I mean, as a committee, do we set up a goal that says we want to come out of this cost neutral? Or do we want to maybe try to make a little bit? If it's cost neutral, it costs $4 million to tear it down, but it's valued at $4 million, and someone says, hey, I'll give you nothing, but give me the property, I'll take care of it, then maybe that's one of our goals. You know, and then from there, we can see if we can, you know, get some revenue.
Versus having a developer come in and purchase the property and reuse the building. That would definitely make money for the
Yeah,
town.
yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, yeah, if he says, hey, I'm gonna redo Edelbrook, whatever,
Right.
they're gonna reuse the building, so they're gonna be, that's gonna be a positive cash flow, I would assume. Not a lot, but a positive.
And going back to what we were talking
I-
earlier, Edelbrook versus a developer is gonna offer two different prices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my understanding is Edelbrook's a nonprofit. So if Edelbrook took over the school, you're not gonna get tax revenue
Yeah,
from the property.
correct.
So just so that we're all on that, that's clear.
Yeah, that's why I said it goes back to the goal, not only the initial cost, but ongoing cost. Do we wanna just say, hey, it's a burden to the town, and if we can get out of this for nothing, or we make a few dollars up front, and then it's off our plate as far as maintenance and all the other stuff, then is that a win in the win column? I don't know.
Or split the property, keep the land in the back.
Yeah, there's options too.
And then you have some easement or something to get to the back, right? You'd have to work with
Yeah,
the
but
front
you
property.
have an
yeah,
easement.
right away.
Right away or easement.
Were you pulling up something, Dave?
Well, I just had an answer to the previous questions whenever you guys were ready for that.
Yeah.
Sure.
It looks like College Street is independently owned. It looks like it's 28 individual units, so it looks like condominiums. And then Woodrow Wilson, it's connected. So there's the newer, lower one-level part, and then the older building. That's owned privately, the older building for the apartments, and then the city of Middletown still maintains ownership of the lower level as the Board of Education.
Okay. Who owns it? Could you let us know who owns?
Yeah, I could tell you that right now. Woodrow Wilson is owned by Woodrow Wilson Middletown LLC. And the reason I know it's not the city of Middletown is because they just say city of Middletown for that ownership. I could not figure out who owns the College Street. Based on the ownership I'm seeing and the way they broke it up in the GIS into 28 and in the assessor into 28 different units, I believe it'd be an association of those 28 individual owners.
Okay.
Thank you. Just to get back onto the agenda a little bit, there was a couple more assignments that we had discussed in the last meeting. So one that I had was reaching out to the wind developer who did the East Haven High School renovation to the Tyler. I have not heard back from them. I emailed them about a month ago, so I could probably poke them again. The second one that I was in charge of was reaching out to Wesleyan University. I talked with one of their facilities gentlemen, and they tend to not branch far from Middletown. They kind of keep everything on their campus, so they would not necessarily be interested in migrating across the river. We had Brian some contact with Sightlines, but I think we got some information that we were looking for. Sean, you had mentioned maybe reaching out to Oak Hill in regards to any additional space that they would need.
Ryan was.
Ryan was going to do that. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I don't have an update.
Okay, okay. And then Adelbrook, you did the tour with them, so we're set there. Okay, sorry. All right. So the next thing on our agenda, we can have further discussion, was introducing Larry. So thank you for being here. Do you want to give a grand introduction of Larry, Ken?
Sure. Larry Dooley is owner, partner, developer of Colt in Hartford, Colt Gateway. Larry, you could talk a little bit about what is going on there and what you've done, and
So,
thank you for coming.
I just feel your pain, that's the only thing. I'm You got a number that came in twice as high as the number you got a year ago. I feel your pain. So I am real estate, I've been in construction and real estate for 40 years. Unfortunately, it's been that long. And I've been developing Colt Gateway for 18 years now. And we have pretty much everything there you could have. We've got the schools, we've got a brew pub, we've got 250 apartments. It's a great community, and it's been a great, a challenge all the way through, but also a privilege. And when I look at your building specifically, obviously because I've done a lot of historic preservation, so the brownstone is obviously more interesting in that respect. Unfortunately, the other one actually meets historic standards to qualify for tax credits, even though it was probably built after I was born, so that's a little scary. But you look at those two buildings, they're very distinct. Brownstone's a beauty. The other one's, you know, a school. It's kind of the Leave It to Beaver scene. It's kind of where my kids went to school, a similar school to that. Somebody, you had mentioned about like senior housing. I think that's a great kind of a use for that. That particular building would not lend itself well to anything else than kind of the uses you might use as a town, or for specific uses like senior housing, or another type of school that could be a private nonprofit, like the fellow that was there the other day.
Gildersleeve, you're talking about Gildersleeve?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And so that school's a little more challenging. And when you look at, you know, I'm kind of leaning towards Ken's numbers. I think 4 million is somewhat ludicrous, but I wasn't that surprised because the cost of everything has gone up so much. And so I can sit here and talk all day about the challenges of trying to do anything with either one of those buildings, but I have no skin in the game here, so I'm just going to tell you like my experiences and what I look at and see. The one building, if you can't use it for a town use, the Gildersleeve, that's the name of the one school, right? If you could find someone that would come in and take that over in some way and get some kind of maybe payment in lieu of taxes or some kind of something for the services that you offer as a town, that would probably be the best use for what's there. I would not suggest you should demolish that building yourselves, because you're better off trying to find an end user that likes maybe Ken's idea of doing something like little condos or doing. No one's going to approach you with anything but housing, which sometimes makes towns cringe. But that's what you're going to get. That's who's going to approach you. It's a beautiful piece of property, that one. So that would, and Ken showed me something else, another development that you had that was kind of, would lend itself to that. It'd be kind of interesting. It would be very difficult, I think, for a developer to come in and pay for the demolition of that, plus pay you something for the land. Any developer's going to want a tax deal, because that's just going to, it's very difficult right now to get funds from banks unless you're really in. And so right now, a developer's going to have to say, hey, I've got an agreement with the town, they're all for this. They're going to help me out with my net operating income, which means I can borrow a little bit more. If banks are now, the dilemma for a developer right now is banks are lending at probably 50% loan to value. And then the values aren't even up to the amount that it costs to do the development. And then you can add historic tax credits, and you can add, you know, DCD grants. And I was just saying that the DCD grants are now offsetting themselves because they require prevailing wage. So you might get a 30% grant, and then prevailing wage costs you 30%. You're back where you started. So those are the challenges you're going to hear from anybody that looks at those, at either one of those properties. That one's more challenging because the brownstone property is easier to convert to housing as it stands, and it actually would be certainly eligible for historic tax credits. The challenges with that building are very rigid layouts in that, I think you pointed out that it's not like Holt where you just have these kind of columns. This thing has walls that are structural that make for very wide corridors, so don't make for efficient space for apartments.
You're talking about brownstone.
The brownstone now. And also, there's a limited number of apartments you could put in without adding to the building. I love that building. I would never, if you go look at Colt, you can't tell I was there. That's the point. Just looks a little spiffier. But that's the point with these kind of historic renovations. I think that's just a building I'm sure you all are proud of, cool, it's part of your town. So how could you keep it how it is? I think you could do that. But I would temper expectations on what might happen as far as the town, one, receiving a decent revenue and taxes on those properties, because you're going to have to make a tax deal no matter who comes in. And then number two is on the sale of it, the brownstone property would be probably a little bit easier maybe to sell, but even then, for someone to buy it, it's just gonna be difficult. So, those are the things I would warn about on those properties, but they're both beautiful. One, the land, Gildersleeve is the name of the one school.
Yes.
That one has that's a beautiful piece of dirt, you know, so I like that. And I like that as far as, but then you go to the demolition, extraordinary costs in that. But if I was sitting in your position, I couldn't use it, I would try to market it. Now, when you go to get appraisals, and I've done, I go a lot of appraisals, and when you go to get, and the only time I actually do an appraisal, because I find them to be, I won't say what I find them to be, but not the best always. But when you go to get an appraisal, it's got to be very specific. That's why you had mentioned specific use, specific zoning. But you almost have to have something on the hook. Like, you almost have to have, like, okay, we are going to demolish this building and convert it into townhouses. Or we're going to take the brownstone and convert it into, I don't think it could be condos, but convert it into housing, into apartments or something like market rate apartments. If you had those uses kind of pinned down, that would help in that appraisal effort. But to me, I wouldn't put the money into it unless I was really knew what I was, like if somebody was coming in saying, hey, give me that property for free and give me a tax deal and I'm gonna put this in, now maybe you go to the appraiser and say, okay. When you look at that Gildersleeve property, that particular property, the cost to demolish the building is gonna more than offset the value of the land. I don't know what an acre's worth here, but somebody had mentioned here trying to put in the infrastructure required to even do something. You have to put a road down the center, you have to put all your utilities in, all that stuff, and that's gonna be it's not nothing's hundreds of thousands anyway. Those days are gone. So, and that's, I think any developer's gonna come, that's their challenge, is trying to make these numbers work. It's very difficult right now with the cost of things, and then and from your perspective, trying to get something for it, because you're sitting here and you've got everybody from the towns looking at you and saying, look at these beautiful properties. You're telling me you're gonna give this to somebody? You know, what's going on with that? And that's a hard thing to fight, but it's just the truth of the business of development. Most of these towns that have schools and things of that nature, they're really trying to attract a developer through different incentives to get them to come and develop it. The worst thing in the world is when they sit and decay. And I know you all know that. So when a building sits, you can't keep the water out, you can't do this, it starts to decay, things start to, if people aren't walking through the building, one, those buildings are both beautifully maintained, I notice. But how much does that cost y'all? And even the properties too. So unless there's specific, those were just my general views of it, that they're both a challenge. If I was to take on a challenge, you can see I'm leaning towards the brownstone would be the challenge I'd be more interested in. Because I'm not really much of a demo guy. I hate wiping stuff out. Like, I'm really like a historic save it. Ken, no, I would try to save anything. We try to save this carpet. Like, come on, it's so good, it's nice.
Yeah. Call that cheap.
I was gonna say.
It's not cheap, it's frugal. But that's, so that's my take on it. I don't know, any questions? I'd be happy to field them.
Are you doing any other buildings like the Colton House?
So, actually, I'm working with a guy I live in South Windsor, so I'm working with a guy who owns a property there who's actually trying to build apartments on a site that has like a strip mall that has one tenant that's actually pretty successful in that. And so I just went and spoke to them at South Windsor, and that's where I got housing was cringy in that meeting. But we all know too, and this is one of the things that we talked about in that meeting is, I have adult children, but they're probably not going to be buying a house for a long time. And so they're renters. And when I look at what's going on at Colt with the rents and the people that we have there, extraordinary young professionals, really, they're all market rate at Colt. But anyway, so the South Windsor is one that I'm working on, and there have been a couple others where people are starting to bring me in to just say, can we look at this? Everybody's struggling right now, really struggling.
Does that answer your question?
So this is just throwing it out. I know we've discussed this, and I know, and it was brought up on Facebook, actually, the idea of having Brownstone as a boutique hotel.
Well, it sounded like you had something cooking here.
Spa.
There.
With a spa.
Right, it will be right around the corner of
And
Brownstone.
I would not discount that thought if you had that, if that's a true, is that
That's
happening?
happening, yeah.
Yes, the
it's
spa is
happening.
The
happening.
spa is happening.
Yeah.
That thing's a real deal, right?
That's a
They-
real
They
deal.
came in, they put their money where their mouth was, they bought that.
Yeah.
And they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually, the property owner of that was the one that started the conversation in regards to the hotel idea. I think they
Yeah.
were thinking it could be at Branyard Place, but we had had that conversation previous to that. We do have a wedding venue at St. Clement's, right on the outskirts of Portland
So
that
there is
doesn't have.
another reason
Yeah,
you
it
might
doesn't
have
have
families
any
wanna stay
accommodations
for
that
wedding.
way.
Yeah.
Wesleyan, and I think this is conversations that were just on the Facebook post, was Wesleyan University. There's not any great accommodations for parents' weekends. I mean, there's the Middletown Inn, but that's a pricier
Right.
version. A
So
lot of
if you
people
had
are
like
going
a
to Cromwell.
boutique
Right,
hotel, that would be
Right.
possible.
yeah.
I think the struggle there is gonna be finding that developer that does those kind of things.
Mhm.
Now, you might make it a little more intriguing in that, my son works down in Tampa, and my wife and I just went down and stayed at a place called The Roost. And it's a place that is a combo. So it's kind of like a hotel, but it's got parts are hotel for really short-term stays, and some are almost like apartments where you could probably even do a year lease possibly, but they do shorter term. That could be kind of cool, like a mix of that, just because you're trying, from your perspective, you're just trying to attract the investors. Not so much the developers even, honestly, because if the money's attracted there, it makes it very attractive
They'll
to
come,
me
yeah.
as well. So you always have to put that together. So, but I do think a hotel, especially with what you have coming in town, doesn't sound, if that wasn't happening, I'd say, you might be pushing a little
Right,
bit.
right.
But with that, I think maybe it's possible, yeah, absolutely.
Probably, and I mean, my take on that is it could be another net zero.
Mm.
Because when I run my numbers, it's just hard to make it all work. But if you were gonna say, you offer that property up for that type of development, maybe that makes it more attractive. But
Yeah, right.
I'm not that expert, I'm just
Sure.
going off.
Net zero is not net zero for you all, because if you could
That's
get
right.
somebody to
Water,
take it,
sewer, tax.
Right.
you don't have to pay to maintain it.
Right.
I know all about that net zero. That's not-
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you can get out of the maintenance of it
Right.
and have somebody else take it, the only thing is you just have to be assured that they're going to, that particular one, that they're gonna keep the facade and
Well, and that's a
the-
question I had for you. With a cult, we want to at least the front facade. Like, obviously, there was the original
Sure.
building, there's been additions.
Yeah, the
that-
back's a little more challenging.
Right, and that obviously
it's-
is built after the fact. But is
Yeah.
there a clause, or is there some way that, with a developer or an investor, that you could say, you can do whatever you want on the inside, but there's certain
I got some people,
verbiage?
the historic registry and stuff, I
Okay.
got some people over here that'll make anybody crazy if they try to do anything to that building, so. But it is just going after the historic part of it, because it's a
Right.
valid, it's a historic
And the
building, it's part of your
location.
town, it's super important.
Right.
So there's the Hartford, Connecticut Preservation, that does stuff like that can help you to make sure you get the things in place legally
Yeah.
that are gonna stop
For that
anybody from
sale.
taking a wrecking ball to
Mm.
that one. The other one, it might need a wrecking ball. But.
But less than $4 million wrecking ball.
Yeah, the Kenny price wrecking
The
ball.
Kenny
But,
Or a
but,
convalescent home.
that's the part, and there's a need for that. Do you have anything like that in this town?
What's that?
Yes.
Like senior living, senior
Yes,
housing?
we have,
We have
You
senior.
have a decent amount?
We have
All
apartments,
kinds.
they're full all the time.
we have 255 and above communities, we have, no, 3, I would say.
Copper Beach is one that we drove through.
Copper Beach isn't 55 and
Oh,
above.
it isn't?
No.
I thought it was.
Oh, I thought it was.
But I mean,
Yeah.
like, I think that would lend itself more
we
to
have,
the higher level assisted living, like what
Right.
people need even beyond like the over 55, like
Right.
actually
Like the
assisted
Greystone
living.
and, yeah.
Yeah, like something.
That's a rest home.
Well, there's a great need for that, and one of the,
There is.
one of the people, who was there that was there was somebody there that does something like that, or was it, somebody did some.
Yeah, Joe does that.
Yeah.
That's Attlebrook.
Oh, that's,
That's part of what they do.
and who, and the other guy, what was his potential use?
Joe? Oh,
Yeah.
or Attlebrook. Which
The one
one?
that was at the,
You had one?
You asked about Joe.
Yeah,
Okay,
Joe.
Joe's
Yeah.
thinking, he's interested in Gildersleeve, is what he's in.
Right, but that was the same thing, it was for senior housing type of situation. So it just, it kind of screams that when you go there. And they have one in Windsor Locks that I know my mother-in-law was waiting on a waiting list to go to, and it was just an old school, it was a school where my wife went to elementary school, and probably a very similar building, you know? So that's what when I see that, that's what I see with that particular building. Anything else?
So I'm just naive, like, how does little old me go out and try to find investors for this process? Like, I mean, maybe you guys know, I don't know, like, how would we even try to make those types of connections? And I don't know if that's even for us to kind of figure out as we create our report, but.
Right.
I think it's a for sale sign.
first
Well,
step.
well, sometimes it's that simple, but it's also,
Zillow.
that's, right, you know, brokers can be your friends. So that's probably where you'd want to be looking, is maybe talking to somebody from a larger brokerage firm that might know somebody that's, you know, checking around Connecticut for good places or wants to do a little boutique hotel. I have some people that I could hook you up with if you want to chat with, like even some of the architects, like JCJ, like Peter Stevens, he's always like a guy that's super interested, knows a lot of people that do development. There's a guy he brought over because we have a lot that I was working on doing possible, that modular apartment thing I was talking about. So, you know, I think you got to make your own connections, but certainly I would probably start with like a broker. If somebody here knew of a brokerage firm, or just kind of start to put the word out in that respect.
Yeah.
The first one I would try to talk to it about would be the owners of the spa coming in and see if they have any interest.
Well, I talked to Darlene Rice.
Darlene, she's the one that did the post, yeah.
Right, and about that, because I was talking about, you know, the
Right.
hotel part. They are not interested at all to do any overnight stays, or even, you know,
It's a-
developing.
It's a day
It's a
spa,
very
yeah.
specific business, the
Mhm.
hotels.
Right.
And it's a tough business.
But that's their main, that's their
They're all
main
tough,
money.
but
Right.
right now, the only game in town is housing.
Mhm.
It's the only place where you can couple the money. Now, how long is this spa supposed to take to get rolling?
2
They're-
years?
they're
2
saying
years.
a
Darlene
year,
said she's
right?
working with them
1
for
year.
2 years. She
They're
said-
They've been
saying-
working with
Yeah.
them for 2 years.
Yeah.
They got
They're
it
saying
approved
like
the
in a
last
year.
month, they're saying they're gonna have it built in a year.
So there's a couple things about 1 year. If I was sitting in your spot, I'd be saying, all the developers are kind of playing a little bit of a waiting game right now to see if we can
Play it
get through
out,
some
yeah.
of these things. And then if you have a year that happens, all of a sudden it looks a lot better, right? Because like if somebody comes in to develop that, or you're trying to get a hotel person in there to develop that in that respect, it would be better to have that, obviously.
Up and
Look-
running,
Look what we
yeah.
have here, and then hopefully maybe interest rates go down.
Right,
So
right.
that's a great point. I mean, I was wondering if we have that on our little matrix, that is a reason to wait to do something. But, interest rates.
There's a few
Well-
things in holding patterns right now, a few developments that are waiting for money, for reduced interest rates, for the state to get smart about the money that they're giving and not putting so many demands on it that it negates it. There's a lot of things that people are trying to get through right now that I think, and then everybody thought interest rates were gonna go down this year, and maybe not. Doesn't look very likely at all. So when you look at going into 2025, I know even on because I have an investor partner who happens to be Chevron Oil, but they're always looking at, even their exit, when they might exit, and we're not thinking about anything this year. And maybe next year, peak into next year, and probably 26. That's the dream. But you could also be laughing at this in 26. Remember when that guy said 26 was gonna be better?
Well, and I think
So, we don't-
in the real world, they can't take ownership of these properties right away anyway. Because if we're building a school, we still need at least one of them for swing space. So we have to buy ourselves probably, 3 to 4 years until they can hand over those keys and get those students out of those buildings to move into the new one too. So I think that's something that we have to keep in our mind too. but I agree with you, like if the spa is building in a year, they're up and running for a year
At
or
least
two.
it's going or it's in
Seeing the
place
draw
and-
of people coming to
yes,
town.
that's gonna be
yeah.
huge, even if, no matter what, if you end up having to develop that as housing, even
Yeah.
that's gonna look more attractive, if that's right there.
But in the devil's advocate version of that, at that point, Brainerd Place is somewhat open. Something's open in 2 or 3 years, right?
That's
So
gonna be
that
good, that'll just draw more people.
That's driving more people.
That's
So
gonna
then
make
the
it
question
better.
is, do we still need more housing?
You will.
Always need more.
It's crazy. I just looked at my rates right now. We're always in the, if we have 3% vacancy with our turnovers of 250 apartments, it's rare. And there's so many apartments now being built in Hartford all over the place, and everybody keeps saying, oh my gosh. And I'm not saying it, you know, at some point, it's gonna get, you're gonna saturate the market, but
Sure.
but I would guess, just because of, it's really not difficult to get here. It's a little
No.
bit of a convoluted route, but it's not difficult
It's easy, yeah.
whatsoever. So
Mhm.
I think you got really good housing prospects. I think that developer's gonna do fine with his occupancy. And you're not talking about adding massive amounts of housing units either way. So I think you'd be okay if you did do the housing. I don't think that would fail. It's doesn't seem as though it's gonna fail, so.
Okay. Any other questions for Larry?
No, I think he answered everything. He corrected me on my infrastructure costs. Brought it up to 2024 terms.
Oh my God, I wish I didn't.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you,
for
Larry.
being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate your expertise.
You're good.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
If you're interested in buying brownstones.
Yeah, I know.
So the next thing on the agenda was discussion of any new opportunities for biz. And I only noted this simply because I had come up with the contact with Darlene in regards to the hotel potential, but then I was home in Vermont for this weekend, and my parents are contributors to the Tunnel to Towers Foundation, and they are doing this program where they are going in and buying kind of rundown buildings, hotels specifically, but are looking for properties all over to come and make these veteran kind of villages. So I thought maybe, I don't know enough about, like, anything really about it, I can research it, but I thought maybe that was worth throwing out there, that they're looking for opportunities to build apartments for veterans. And I looked, the closest one was Buffalo, New York. There's one in Pennsylvania, but there's nothing currently in New England. I'm not saying that, maybe that's not something that we're interested in, but I just wanted to bring the idea out to see if it's worth me following up any further with that, or do we feel that we have enough ideas to kind of, yeah, go ahead.
Just
So in terms of that veteran housing, I know this is not associated with that organization, but in the city of Middletown, I think the state, in one of the old buildings over at the mental hospital property, just converted one of those buildings into veteran housing.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
good.
So that's
Okay.
certainly, if we could possibly reach out to them, because that building was not
I could get costs. on that.
vacant for a couple of years. That I used to drive by that to get out of work, and that was vacant for quite a while. I don't know if they mothballed it better than, say, like Center School, but Central School, yeah, that's certainly a possibility.
Okay, I mean, I'll follow up and just to see if they can offer me any information, if they would even be looking in this area. But thank you, Dan, for that. Any other kind of new
I've got a
ideas?
question going back to Darlene Rice and everything, because, and I know this is a little off topic, because she, in that Facebook post, is going to hopefully ask, suggest, should I say, a big hotel condominium part
Yeah.
of Brainerd Place. Now, we can't go, we can't have two. We don't need two.
We don't need to, no.
We don't need to. And
Right.
she, and I talked to her about that. I said, well, we had, briefly mentioned that. And she's like, well, at the next meeting, she's going to go up. She was going to speak at the last meeting, but it
Oh,
got
okay.
cut off.
Oh, okay.
But, instead of the housing, why not bring in,
Hotel there.
a hotel that has numerous, not huge.
Right,
but-
right.
But at least some that's not quite boutique-y,
Yeah.
more reasonable priced.
Yeah, and I guess when I say boutique, it was just because it's a smaller version, right?
Right.
You maybe only have 10, 12 rooms there, I don't know,
Right,
but.
I think she was thinking
yeah.
a little bit more over there. But
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know where that is even gonna fit in at Brainerd. I don't
Right,
know.
right. No, but that's good to bring up. And there was a woman who responded to Darlene's post, and I had her name written down and I forgot, I don't know where it is. She has been working in the hotel industry, so she might have some knowledge that it might be worth reaching out to her too, if that's a venue that we want to or avenue that we want to carry on.
I'd like to bring in another developer that I work with, Lexington Partners.
Yeah.
They're more on the Larry side, but they also do, they're just much bigger.
Okay.
It might be worth it to have them come in and get another opinion
Perspective,
and work their
okay.
space, if that's okay
Okay.
with everybody.
Sure.
If we
Yeah.
have time, we're kind of.
I know we're crunching.
Yeah, I'd say that's a good one, Ken.
Yeah, agreed.
And then, you know, you got me for the CBRE and the other brokerage firm.
Okay.
That's critical. And then, yeah, the matrix I was gonna draft too, just to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, and I threw one together just because I was trying, and this obviously is supersized again, but I can share this again. And what it did was, you know, kind of list the projects that we talked about, which school it affects, Brownstone, Gildersleeve, or potentially both, and started just kind of giving it dollar signs, and then a list of pros and cons, and I'm more than willing to share this, and we can put it in the meeting minutes, so that others can see it, but obviously yours is probably gonna be a lot more detailed than what this is, but this was just like, I'm trying to wrap my head around what we talk about, and in my mind, what pros and cons were, so I can share this, and this could be a live document that, we can update in the meetings to come, because I know that eventually we have to put a report together, to this, like I said, I can share this with everybody. But any other,
I'm feeling like, right now, I feel like it's so we have sell as is. It sounds like if we're not gonna be using these buildings as schools, right? Our job is to come up with suggestions. I'm kind of redoing it in mind so I can get on the right track here. So if we're coming up with suggestions, one is be prepared for the, I call it the net zero, but like Larry said, he calls it a win for the town. I mean, that's what I'm taking from what he said. It's, even though you're saying, take this piece of property, but you have to make it into this, if you get somebody to sign on to that, and they pay taxes, you know,
right,
I mean,
it's just, I'm not sure, I'm feeling like that seems like the only place to go, because there's so much cost involved with, even if the costs are wrong on the sightline report, even if, there's still a lot.
yeah.
So, is that making sense? I
Yeah,
feel like
it is to me.
does. It makes a lot of sense.
I agree.
It
Because-
doesn't make, we're not, to me, the town of Portland is not a landlord. We don't
No.
intend to be a
You
landlord.
create a taxpayer's burden.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not sure if a suggestion is to re-send out the survey. We did it once. I don't know if 50%, we got about 50%, didn't we?
No.
42? Oh, we got a lot less than that, so.
We had 1,000
Oh,
out of 6,000.
Oh, okay. So we got a lot less than
Yeah.
that. I don't know if that makes sense to redo, because this is getting serious now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we let 1,000 people that, you know, determine what the
Yeah.
real, is that really what the town wants? I mean,
I think
It has been decided
the way I
that the
look at it
schools are
is,
being decommissioned.
this
It's been done. Okay.
committee was put together
Yes.
to propose something to the taxpayers, right? What we think is in the best interest of the town. Now, one of them could be sell as is, right? And the other is, we're going to be net zero. Those are the two options we have.
yeah, yeah.
Keeping in mind that either, like you said, even though the cost might not be right, we still have a cost on these buildings. Gildersleeve, we know, for one, we have between let's say $700,000 cost to, let's say, 2 million, 4 million, whatever they're saying. Plus, that's if the developer's going in and wants to take the land to use as something else. Or if somebody wants to come in and take it over as a school and they're a nonprofit, like Dan said, the only thing we're gaining out of that is we're gaining that they're taking the school over. They're maintaining it, and it's off our expense sheet. Same thing with the biz. Do we get somebody that can look at that? And I know you ran some pretty hard numbers, look at that and say, okay, this is worth X amount of dollars, even though, let's throw a number out, 4 million that they're gonna have to spend to do what they want, plus another 10 to get there where, you know, depending on what they wanna do with it. They, you know, because there's a lot of different things they're gonna have to do, you know, if they need more parking, that sort of thing. So, we either way, I don't think there's any way we're gonna make money on this. If we're able to give the property up to, in Gildersleeve to somebody that's gonna develop it, my suggestion would be that along with them getting that property, they put up a maybe 200 by 200 steel building for us so we can put some of our town services in there, see if we can gain that out of them. But if not, we're getting tax out of it, that's off the expense sheet, and hopefully it's a development and we get our water, we get our sewer, we get our property tax. And the same thing with biz. You gotta remember, there's city water, city sewer, there's property. So you would be getting the property tax collected on that. I don't think, I'm not saying give up on trying to find someone, because, you know, you never know what you're gonna, you know, as they said, there's a butt for every seat, so you never know what you're gonna find. That someone might look at this and say, hey, this is, I know what's going on here, I know what's going on there. There's a lot of people, you know, the Portland is somewhat a golf center of the state. We have 3 very good golf courses. We got the spa coming in. Even though one of the largest hotel chains in Canada owns the spa and doesn't want a hotel, doesn't mean somebody else doesn't want to come in and say, hey, I might be able to do something here and make that work. But,
So I was just hearing, is it true that it's decided that the town is moving forward with no
They've been
more school,
decommissioned.
to be decommissioned the schools?
well,
Nothing's been decided.
it
Oh,
all
I
comes
thought
up
it
to the
had-
referendum.
Yeah, okay, just want to make sure.
Oh, I'm glad you did that, 'cause I really
Can you go
thought
to
it
the
had
podium,
been-
sir?
They're working the.
You've been doing a good job.
Can you do?
Oh, I got hit a different button. It took a minute for it to.
Yeah, it's on a delay.
It's delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, in case we swear, it can beep it out. Just kidding.
Oh, camera 3's moved over, Brian, you want me to move to?
We're good.
Okay.
So as far as what we're doing, as Ken mentioned, the town conducted a survey, the Board of Selectmen conducted a survey asking the town the preferred choice for moving forward with schools. The majority of respondents said they would prefer to close 2 schools. And that's why, when we saw that, that's why we created this committee. And because we didn't want to create a committee and then not go down, or not need to go down that road. But when it looked like that's where the town wanted to head, then the town also said in that same survey, we also want you to have a plan on what you would do with those properties if they were no longer schools. And so that's part of the decision, or it will be part of a referendum in November if the Board of Selectmen moves forward with that. So we do have, as I mentioned, that special meeting coming up with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education, where Dr. Britton and Friar Architecture will be presenting renderings of a proposed new, renovated to new Valley View, as well as corresponding prices and what that would mean as far as bonding to the town. Nothing has been officially decided by the Board of Selectmen yet, so that's something that's going to happen, or the Board of Education. So the Board of Education would need to approve the superintendent's ed spec report is what it's called. So that would be the first step. The Board of Education would basically bless the superintendent's ed spec report, and then the decision would then move over to the Board of Selectmen for the financial piece. And that's where the Board of Selectmen would then set a bonding question to referendum. So we need to apply by June 30th to the state to get in our application for school reimbursement. So right now, we are estimated to be at, I think, a 49% reimbursement rate with the state. And so this is a little different. We thought it was 51. It's gone down 2 percentage points, which went the wrong way than how we'd like it. And then I know, I've seen some estimates from Friar Architecture, and they'll be presenting. So I don't want to get ahead of the numbers, but the numbers are going to have to go to the Board of Selectmen. I don't know what the board's going to decide. They could say the numbers are too high, they don't make sense anymore. I don't know. It's going to be up to the board. So nothing, until then, nothing is officially decided. And really, I think this committee, the goal is to have some ideas. We're not asking you to, tell us exactly what to do with it. And we could always conduct a survey. At the end of the day, the survey is going to be a referendum where voters go to the polls and decide. I mean, that's really the ultimate survey. That's how we're going to know. But as Larry, listening to Larry, there's not easy options, and I'm just thinking, sometimes it's hard to relay information to the town. Sometimes where they're not going to like what they hear, and that wasn't information that I'm already thinking, how are we going to sell a school that we have to almost give away?
That's right.
That doesn't really, that makes the job much harder, and so that's a harder sell to the town. So that's something that I'm already thinking about and a little concerned with. And having a nonprofit like Edelbrook move in is great, but again, as you pointed out, well, then they're not paying property taxes. So on one hand, we're not getting additional, houses, families moving in with school children, so we're not having more school children in the system, but on the other hand, we're not getting that additional tax revenue either. So these are all questions. I mean, there's really no good answer. This is why, we wanted you all here. And
But there is one more than the two you listed, is weight.
Right.
Because interest rates, wait for something to happen to make the environment more attractive to maybe to developers or, investors.
But then tell that to the people who remember Central School.
Yeah, because when will that be?
So that's,
Well, no, it's not wait in
12 years.
empty buildings.
It's
Yeah.
wait until we get closer to,
It's wait to
Couple
do,
years.
it's keep the kids in the schools that we
Mhm.
have for some short period of time.
which we're gonna have to do anyway
Yeah,
if we
we're
move
3 or
forward.
4 years from.
Yeah, so we're doing that anyway.
Mhm.
So there you go. If we're doing that anyway, that is an option to wait, because we're gonna
It
be
is.
waiting anyway.
Yeah.
but I think,
That doesn't give you a solid referendum
I'm not-
suggestion.
But you know what, I think the most helpful thing I think that you guys could do as a committee would be to tell us it's feasible to do this, or, when we toured Brownstone and you were, crunchy numbers and you said, well, I don't know if this could be converted into apartments because it might be cost prohibitive. That's something that's important for us to know. If housing is ruled out at Brownstone, well, that then severely limits what we can do with it. Finding out today that Gildersleeve could cost $4 million to demolish, well, if that were true, really does limit what we could do with Gildersleeve, because basically in that case, we'd be just stuck with the school. We can't really get rid of the school because the land is not worth as much as that building would, be to tear down. So those are the things. I don't think you guys have to decide, this is what we should do, this is the path we should take, let's do it. I think at the end of the day, having some options that are viable or potentially viable, that's really what we're looking for. I mean, these are very big decisions, and
So
it is going to take some
So
time.
is waiting a viable option or not?
One thing I wanted, and I might have we went over this survey a lot when we broke it down as the Board of Ed did too. And we spent a lot of time out of, and I can't remember what that percentage was, of people wanted to know what was gonna happen to those two schools. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, does that mean they wanna know before they go up and vote? Or do they want some type of idea that we're actually thinking about? And that's the million-dollar question, is, are they expecting when they go up there to vote, to put to bonding, is that something they want some sort of a clear message on? Or is it that, us, by having some different options and that we're gonna be meeting for, 2 times a month, and we're actually doing a lot of work here, is that gonna help set some of these people's minds at ease that lived through Central School being vacant for 20 years?
I think we're finding out some helpful information,
Yeah.
hearing Larry and him saying that really, whoever comes into Brownstone, let's say the town were to decide to sell Brownstone. If a developer is gonna come in and going to have to spend all that money to make it useful to them, then we're really not going to get much in the sale. That's what we're hearing, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that I think we were all thinking about, or at least I was, well, hey, if we have this multi-million-dollar school project, hey, if we sell, one of our properties, we can help offset the cost. But it's turning out that that's not really true, and I think that's useful just in and of itself to know. That's something that I didn't know before,
Right.
and it's tough to hear, but it's, apparently the truth. So these are things that, I know the board's going to have to consider, so.
I think, Kent, that, so nobody in this town or on this committee has a crystal ball, right? So we don't know what's gonna happen. We couldn't have anticipated that when this development here in town started in 2015-16, that things were gonna change as much as they have. And, CVS pulls out because they're closing CVS stores all over the country, right? It has nothing to do with Portland, it has everything to do with globally and what's happening. So the idea of waiting is fine, but even if it was voted upon to build the new school, we're 2 to 3 years away from putting a shovel in the ground, right, just for planning and development purposes. And so to delay this decision-making or keep these schools open longer is just gonna push that further down the road. It doesn't shrink that gap, it just pushes it out further. So it maybe the solution is to say, let's wait and bide some time, but, the economy is gonna be very different, potentially very different in 2 to 3 years. And in the meantime, we still need to maintain these buildings and pay for these buildings. So it's not gonna be an easy decision, but I think the recommendation are gonna be, here's the possible different options. And these ones are the ones that we've considered that don't seem to be viable today.
So-
We don't know what's gonna happen
Right.
in 3 or 4 years, but from what we're hearing from our trusted friends in the industry and trusted developers, this is how they see it now, but that could change. So there's not, I don't think we're gonna walk away from this with a lot of really great, answers that people are gonna be like, yes, this is the way to go. Especially, when you start talking about net zero and tax abatements, which has become a very dirty word, in this town, that's, I think that's gonna be some tough sledding.
When he was talking about that, I was like, wrong place to bring that up.
Yeah.
I think it's worth bringing up I don't know if it's worth going through the Sightlines report sometime in a little more depth so that everyone understands what all those costs are. Because when I first walked in Gildersleeve and we threw numbers around, whatever was on the report, 7 million or whatever, and then I went in and got into the meat of those numbers, I'm not sure that the numbers we are looking at are really what the numbers are to update or maintain. Let's say it says 7 million, but when I start circling everything that is gotta do, it's 4 million, not 7. And maybe I'm misunderstanding what that is, but it seems to me like the numbers, and I went through Viz, every number, and they're legit. The unit costs they use, how they quantified, in my mind, they're pretty good. But everything in the kitchen sink is in there.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that's,
So I don't understand what the purpose of looking at the numbers is. We're not fixing
well,
schools.
because I don't know if everybody understands what the numbers
No,
are.
because.
Can I interject? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I think you touched on something I think it's worth talking about because, I know it's worth talking about because Fryer Architecture just updated those numbers, as I mentioned, in the Sightlines report. Keep in mind, Fryer will be here presenting, well, it's going to be at the high school next Tuesday, presenting on the proposed plan for the renovated to new Gildersleeve, or excuse me, Valley View. And so those are questions that, if maybe it's not the best place to ask that at that meeting, but I can reach out to Fryer, I'd be more than happy to. Maybe it's worth,
Well,
because
seeing
even
that
if we
report
don't,
first.
you know, as Bob Shea had told us, some of the things in that report he believes may be designed for schools specifically.
Right.
So if we were to keep the building and let's say we were to keep Brownstone, but it wasn't going to be a school, well, then maybe not everything in that Sightlines report needs to be done. So those are great questions, Ken. And to be honest, I think no matter what, I think it would be helpful to us to know what the real costs are for updating those buildings. Whether or not they're a school or not, I mean, there's capital improvements that would need to be done if it were to, you know, be a maintained building. So I definitely think it's worth, you know, exploring that and finding that out. Again, a final decision still has yet to be made. At the end of the day, I'm trying to stress that. I don't know what the Board of Selectmen is going to do ultimately with this plan. I think we're heading down a direction, but at the end of the day, the numbers have to make sense too. And just as you guys are crunching numbers, I know the Board of Selectmen is going to be crunching numbers as well. And so these are you know, difficult decisions, and I think every option needs to be explored or at least looked into so that we make the best decision. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about making the right decision for the town. And so, you know, I think it's important that, you know, we be flexible and that, at least that's how I think. I'm trying to, at the end of the day, you know, make the best decision. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, and you know, and you guys are doing a great job, and I appreciate the help. I just want to say thank you.
Fall guy, is that what you said? But, I mean,
My only 2 cents at the end here is that we talked as the Board of Education, is when we get to this plan, we're gonna have to put a marketing campaign together for the referendum. Part of that marketing campaign is what I think is gonna be an outcome of this meeting, saying that, hey, we've got options. Some of them are actually gonna get better if the spa and the Brainerd Place come into place for sellability or usability. I think that the fear was coming into this committee is that, oh my God, we're not gonna have anything used, nobody wants them, they're gonna sit empty and they're gonna be boarded up, whatever. But if we're starting to hear that there's possibilities, that there's an Edelbrook, there's a senior housing, there's a rehab, there's a developer where they put in housing or apartments or whatever, so we've got 3 or 4 good options for Gildersleeve, and then we go to Brownstone and say, hey, maybe there could be a boutique hotel, maybe there could be a senior housing, or different possibilities. If we can sell that part of the package, that there's not all no, there's possible. And one of my thoughts in parallel was that is, did anybody talk to St. Clemens and see if they maybe had any interest?
Well, that was one question, and I think you sent me an email, I never responded to you. So what happened with the hotel that was weren't they supposed to originally be building a hotel?
I believe
or try
it was
to?
with they'll answer it. He's
Okay.
coming
They haven't
back.
got the.
Just stay
You
there,
should just-
Ryan.
you should just
You're
stay
getting your
there,
steps
Ryan.
in, though.
We have our step challenge at work. so
Ah.
it's all part of my plan.
Put it on your little machine.
But, so, yeah, St. Clements they would love to build a hotel. It would be part of their plan. They've explored it before, they've come awful close, and ultimately what is the deciding factor for them currently is they don't have water or sewer. And that's really what they need in order to build a hotel. Now, this was years ago now, this was about at least 10 years ago, so the costs of construction now are significantly higher. I know, we have that proposed, there was the gentleman who owns our gun store in town was building a complex at the Four Corners in town, but that's been on pause because of the construction costs. And so that's one of those things that you're seeing now, is that it's harder to build new construction because of the cost. It makes things a little more difficult, but that's not to say things can change in the future. But with St. Clements, that's what did that project in over there. And
Do we have a contact person
yeah,
there?
I've had several meetings with St. Clements about water. They
And it's so sad because they're so close to the river.
and I've had, not only have they met with me, but they've met with the town manager of East Hampton. I talked with David Cox quite a bit about how can the town of Portland and the town of East Hampton work together and get that water and sewer along Route 66. And so, that's a whole separate project that we're working on, is our water project. And phase one is to get that new town well up and running and into the system. Phase two is expansion. And so it's part of our long-term plan is getting that water. And when we reach out to the state, that's what we talk about. We talk about the possible expansion to East Hampton, because that's really where we can get the federal dollars, and the state grant money is through that. And so that's something that we're working on. But St. Clements, until they have water and sewer, city water and sewer, it's just not going to be in the cards for a hotel there. Now, we also have other properties in town that, we're gonna have to see. I'd like to put a hotel at 248 Brownstone Avenue, that property that we just remediated, that the town bought
Where is that?
in 2019.
Brownstone Avenue, we
Yeah,
bought
what
it,
it- yeah.
had this tank, it was the tank farm, we bought it.
So 248 Brownstone Avenue is one of 3 parcels that the town purchased, 3 brownfield sites the town purchased in 2019. We had a grant from DECD of $1.1 million to remediate the properties. We've completed the bulk of the remediation of 248 Brownstone Avenue. We also received an additional $500,000 topper grant from DECD to award to a prospective developer. So if the town can find a private developer for that property, they will get an additional $500,000 for additional remediation work. And so the town is working on an RFP now, a request for proposal, for a developer for that property. Now, I don't know what we're going to get. We went out to bid 2 years ago, and we didn't get a single offer. And it was, at the time, it was pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
But we specifically, at the time, wrote the RFP for a restaurant. That was what the goal had in mind, was a restaurant at 248 Brownstone Avenue. And also, the property had not been remediated yet. So the remediation work hadn't started. We also didn't have a brand-new luxury spa coming adjacent to the property.
Across the street,
So now we have a $500,000 topper grant. We have this brand-new spa coming, and the work has been remediated. And it's waterfront property on the Connecticut River.
Beautiful.
So honestly, I'm pretty optimistic. I don't know if it would be a hotel or what. Honestly, we're gonna issue an RFP, and we're gonna look for developers with the best ideas. And we're not going to, limit it to just a restaurant this time. And so that's something that we're working on now. We're trying to get that out either this month or early next month. And so, more to come on that. But as far as economic development goes, this could tie in with the schools. But so we'll see how all that plays into everything else. But I'm pretty optimistic about the town of Portland's riverfront redevelopment, and that's one of the priorities, I think, right now of the Board of Selectmen. So, in addition to this.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, yeah, I didn't know about that. That's interesting. Okay.
All right.
Any other thoughts for this evening? I think, I don't have it written down, our next meeting, I believe, is a month out. Do we want to look at putting one in between, or, because we would then, our
I think we
report
should.
is due
I
a
think
month after
we
that.
should. Let's get them before camping season.
When is the tentative report expected? The
When is the report?
Tentative report is expected when?
We didn't give you a date on the report. Honestly,
But along those lines, though, are the selectmen gonna wanna have something in there to hear about when they make this decision?
well, we have two selectmen here already, so,
Okay.
you know, there's no problem with updates. I know Sean has been updating the Board of Selectmen regularly at our meetings. And honestly, I think it's going to be a list of options, like we've
Yeah.
talked about. I don't think there's a specific date, Brian, right now at least,
Wasn't it June? Wasn't it?
I think, we talked about June. If we have to get the report, or our application has to be into the state by June 30th. So if we're gonna have to do it by June 30th, really, it's not so much when we get the application in, as much as it's about when we're trying to sell this to the town people, and so that's really, I would say August, the latest, because really, once we get that application in, if all goes forward, then the next part is pivoting and selling it to the town, saying, hey, this is the path that, we're heading on for a November referendum. It includes, X amount of bonding, that we're gonna have to ask on a referendum question. And then that would leave two properties, and we've had this terrific committee that has put all this work in, and they've given us some great suggestions as far as what our potential options are for those properties, and that's, so I would say June would be ideal, but I would say by the end of, by August would be the time.
So, in what you just said about 248 Brownstone, if we get lucky and all of a sudden a developer wants to come in and build a hotel, obviously that would take hotel off of our list of options, right? We're not building two hotels.
I don't know if
So
it-
I'm wondering,
Yeah.
does that play off of something of the outcome of what we would have here?
Based on what Larry was saying, I don't know if a hotel is an option. I don't know. I don't know. He just made us, he wasn't too keen on a hotel,
I
was he?
think he thought because of the size of it, I think you wouldn't have enough rooms for, the way I sounded, like you wouldn't be able to have enough rooms to sustain a profit, is how I read it.
I think but from what I heard Larry say, the only thing that would concern me was, he said, I wouldn't have thought a hotel was good without the spa.
Right.
Now, we're not gonna have a spa for another year, so I don't know if the message to the town can be, hey, let's wait a year and we might get a hotel. I don't know if that's you know what I mean? I'm just trying to, so I think a hotel, I've seen a lot of people on Facebook that say, hey, let's get a hotel's great, but you gotta get a hotel that's interested. I've seen people want a Trader Joe's, I've seen people want everything under the sun, but at the end of the day, it's the businesses that we didn't pick and choose the Dollar General.
Right.
They chose us.
Right.
So, I mean, that's just how it works. So, I mean, ideally, if we can get a hotel, that'd be awesome, So I'm just concerned that knowing the costs of what it costs to turn Brownstone into anything, as you crunch those numbers, and that was on housing, on market rate houses, I don't think that the percentages are as good with hotels. I could be wrong, but I think Larry said hotels are tough. So if hotels are tough right now, I don't think we're getting one right now. And that's really the concern, especially if we have a hotel company that's not building a hotel, they're building a spa. And the reason is the profit margins on spas are much, much higher than spas. And that's what they flat out told me in our first meeting. That's why they've pivoted and they're not building hotels. So just like CVS isn't building CVS's, and it's just markets change and companies adapt to the current economy, and so those are all things that I think it's not easy. It's not easy.
I think any recommendation is just a snapshot in time.
Right.
Right, so it's good this year, may not be good in 3 or 5 or 7 years, but it could still be put on the table. So this is, from what we've decided together as a group, a boutique hotel or a long-term stay apartment, would be one potential viable solution. But we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to say, this is what it's gonna be. Here's 3 options or 4 options. And it includes, buy, sell, develop, whichever. But I don't think you leave anything off the table for consideration of a future,
I don't mean
development somewhere else,
that.
because everything is so nebulous.
I just don't want the town saying, "Hey, Ryan, where's our hotel?" That's, the company said we could get a hotel. Where's our hotel? And that's just the only thing I would be concerned with. I want to make sure that we present. The options are options that are tangible or reachable for us today. Maybe and that could be what you put in the report. A boutique hotel may be viable in a year or two, and especially given the Nordic Spa that's coming, and should market conditions arise to that, we could do that. You know what I mean? So I think you can definitely word that in there.
But we don't, to further what you're saying, I think, we don't let whatever's gonna happen on the water impact anything
That
we're
we're doing,
doing.
yeah. Right.
Because who knows?
Right.
Yep.
And getting back to Kristen's question about the next meeting, knowing that we have a deadline coming up and it's gonna get tougher for all of us, I think, when the summer comes around, maybe 2 weeks out isn't the right idea for the next meeting, or maybe 3 weeks out, but I think some of it's dependent on if we can get another, potential developer to come in and take a look. That would carry more weight, for a next
Pretty
meeting.
sure we
But-
can do that.
But if we could do that within the next 2 weeks, then maybe 3 weeks out is the right time to have a meeting, because we're not gonna be able to make up that time.
If we get the developer here and maybe some feedback on the sale from commercial real estate
Yep.
brokers, that would be huge.
Do you want to figure, do we have one scheduled yet? Do we have one scheduled the 6th or no?
No, we don't have one.
Do you want to schedule the 6th and then do like the 20th? Or do you want to go 3
We have
weeks
one on
in
the
between?
20th already.
You do, so you want to do
Mhm.
the 6th?
So just so you know, Sean, that the 6th is, not that it matters to this group, but it is our annual town meeting on the budget.
Oh, yeah, I
So
got
that's
to
at
be-
7 PM, but that is at the high school, so that wouldn't interfere here. You could meet, I just wouldn't be here for that.
Who else?
I won't
It would
either.
just be me and maybe Sean.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, no, we gotta have you guys.
Then let's go to the 13th. You want to do 13th and 27th or no?
27th is Memorial Day
Well,
weekend.
Yeah.
You would
Oh,
do,
Memorial Day.
12th is.
the 20th is your
Just let me know.
regularly scheduled meeting.
Correct.
So you could do the
Just let me know.
13th and the 20th if you wanted to
Does
meet
it
2
have
weeks
to be
in a row.
Mondays or Tuesdays? Could we have it on the 7th instead of the 6th?
The 7th, Tuesday, the 7th, is that EDC?
Yeah, when they meet in the library.
Okay, but, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we could do the 7th if you, so we're
Yeah,
talking.
I would have to do it
Tuesday.
remotely, just because my husband's on shift that night.
EDC's the 14th.
Okay, so I think we could do the Tuesday. You also don't have to decide now. I know, there was some confusion as far as special meetings go, but let's say you get a developer that can come to a meeting and he can or she can make it to a May 7th meeting. Someone could put that in an email and say, hey, I have a developer for May 7th. Would you all like to have a special meeting? And you could then vote at that time, and that way you'd have a developer in. We could also maybe we could invite Friar Architecture to talk about the sightlines as well at a special meeting, or at the May 20th meeting as well. So those are some things to consider. I can reach out to Friar and see if they have any availability on either May 7th or May 20th. Want me to
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah, I think that might be worth a conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you wanna do Friar and the developer in the same meeting?
You could.
Yeah, would there be any conflict in that?
As long, I would base it on their availability.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
no, just-
they-
Yeah, I was gonna say, sometimes it's better to offer 2 options. If we offer the 7th and the 20th, they both work for the 7th, great. If they both don't.
So are those the 2 dates, 7th and the 20th?
I think, is it gonna be a problem that I physically can't be here? I'd have to be remote on the 7th?
No. you
And
could-
I'm not available at all on the 7th.
Okay. What about the 8th?
Do we have a meeting the 8th?
No.
You guys have a lot of
I'm good.
meetings.
I do, I don't.
Yeah, the
I
8th is
don't.
fine, it's just the 7th I'm not
Okay.
available.
Does the 8th work, that Wednesday?
Yep.
Okay,
Sounds
if
good.
we do that, I can be here
You
in
don't have a
person.
BOE meeting, right?
No, we meet on the 1st and the 15th.
Okay.
And I think we just get something on the calendar as tentative and see how the rest of these meetings unfold, and we can shift it
Yeah.
around, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, it's amongst us to decide whether to shift this
Our
meeting.
next
Yeah,
meeting.
it's a special meeting, so you have up until 24 hours before to post an agenda, to change the meeting. You know, you can cancel the meeting too if you're not in a habit. So if you want to schedule a meeting right now for May 8th, if you want to do that, we can do that today. And then if, for whatever reason, we don't have a developer and there's no need, we can cancel it, you know, at a later date. So do you want to do that then?
Yeah. let's
Yes,
set
I would
the
say if we
date.
can schedule them for the 8th, that would be great. Our backup would have them come on the 20th.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion just for the
Oh, what am I?
record?
I'll
motion?
make a
Oh.
motion. We
Sorry.
have a meeting on May 8th and at 6:30 PM in the Buck Foreman Room. And on May 20th at 6:30 PM in the Buck Foreman Room. Tentatively have guests at either one of the meetings.
Second that.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
in favor? Yeah, sorry.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Does that not work? We're good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other things for this evening?
Are there any other to-dos? I mean, do we need anybody to do anything else?
No, Ken, I know you tagged on a lot of things. Do you need support in anything? You said you were going to reach out to CBRE and you're all good? Okay. And I will look into the tunnel to towers, just to see if they have any information they can provide.
What was that?
I said I'm gonna just reach out to the,
That's what I thought.
tower to, tunnel to towers, just to
Okay,
see if they can offer any
But that's
information.
the acres.
All right, are we good?
Yep.
All right, so I make a
I'll make
motion
a
to
motion
adjourn.
Second.
That's
Second.
personal.
All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor? All right, any opposed? Excellent. Thank you all.
8:03.
8:03. Is that
$18.
already? Wow.